Professional. It's gonna be professional with a shave. I mean, look at this.
We're looking like a couple of Captain Americas over here.
We don't even have to worry about the continuity. We've got different, facial hair, and you're still alive because it's a prequel.
Does this one take place after?
No, this one takes place before our spaceship.
Infinity Detour?
Yeah, no, this is definitely a prequel set in the 90s.
Well, then
this is how we look back then, right?
Put on my grunge rock.
You gotta grow your hair out to like here.
You comb it all forward and put on my flannel shirt. I'm ready to go. They didn't throw the 90s in our faces as much as I was expecting.
I just don't understand why they had to destroy so much 90s in the ending fight.
Yeah.
We could have just been throwing spacey things at each other, shooting spacey. We would have still got it. So
many pinball machines gave their lives.
Captain Marvel.
A phrase not uttered in the movie.
That's true.
It's sort of assumed the identity Marvel towards the end in a conversation with Fury, but she said, "I'll finish what she started," and etc. But
which interesting change of Marvel, because he was at the very least a guy.
Was Marvel a separate character from Captain Marvel?
Yes. He was the original Captain Marvel, and then Carol Danvers is like I don't know if she came into the 2000s or if she predates that. I think she might have even been there in like the 80s, but of course, I'm so much better with DC lore than Marvel lore. I'm not interested in the Marvel, if it's not Spider-Man or because honestly, that's been what the whole MCU has been about. When they bring in Iron Man villains, here's Ironmonger, here's Whiplash, no one knows who they are. Yeah. Nobody knows. No one has ever heard of them.
So nobody cares if
the privileged few,
just tweak things a little bit.
If this had been a Justice League movie and someone had been like, to go after the humans is to court death, and then Darkseid turns toward the camera and smiles, everyone would have got it. No one knew.
Instead, everyone in the theater's like, who's that?
Huh?
He must be a guy from the comics.
I'm sure there were Marvel's fans and Marvel super fans, but I feel
I didn't know who Thanos was at all.
DC expanded lore has penetrated the popular culture to a degree that Marvel lore is only because of these movies.
Right.
The average person is not going to get nearly as many of these references as the average person would in a DC movie.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
So yeah, that is all one big defensive justification of my ignorance. But I know that Marvel, I'm pretty sure he was Kree, and he was the original Captain Marvel, and I want to say it was somewhere around the late 70s, early 80s that he died of something like AIDS, and then they brought in a new Captain Marvel, and I think it was Carol Danvers, but she's had more of a renaissance recently. They actually killed her off for a while in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and had Kamala Khan, a Muslim teenager.
Right.
But it seemed like, even though she had body stretchy, growy powers or something, I haven't read any of those. I've just seen, because I don't really read Marvel comics that much. But it seemed like they were hinting that she was Captain Marvel's successor, what Captain Marvel was missing. But I'm pretty sure Carol Danvers has since come back, and she's had a high-profile comics run in the last few years. So
right.
So yes,
and I'm sure now she will have a surge of popularity.
Expose it. I'm sure any Marvel super fans watching, as if anyone's watching at all.
There are 34 people watching.
Will poke 1,000 holes in my spotty knowledge, but that is the extent of my familiarity.
But
with
it doesn't matter,
material.
you see, because in classic Marvel fashion, they just take a bunch of things and combine them. Yeah, for the movie.
Wait. Now the Skrull are a small group of innocent refugee good guys that are basically written out of the story. That's that's like the J.J. Abrams movies taking the Borg and making them a small, colony of homeless gypsies that are just trying to find a planet to live on.
Homeless technological gypsies.
And you're just like, wait, what? That's how you're going to use the Borg? What? That's basically this is a pretty big deal with the Skrull. They're,
Well, they couldn't make them too big of a deal because we never see them in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which deal with the Kree a lot.
Right.
And if they were a big deal.
I kind of feel like again, going back to Star Trek terms, more familiar ground, the Kree would be the Klingons, the Skrull would be the Romulans,
Sure.
and the Shi'ar Empire, who pretty much only deal with the X-Men because their Empress is in love with Xavier, would be, they're cooler than the Cardassians, but you know what I mean? They're kind of the Cardassians. I mean, not lame and annoying like Cardassians. So it's a pretty big deal taking the entire tentpole race of being like, oh no, they're a small group of scattered refugees.
Yeah.
And they're not an empire. They're not launching super Skrull invasions. They're not having any secret wars. They're not, you know.
Yeah, before this movie came out, everyone was like, all the online speculation was, oh, who's going to secretly be a Skrull all this time?
Yeah,
like, is Iron Man a Skrull this whole time? And after watching this movie, you're just like, no,
they're not gonna. They wouldn't do that at all.
It doesn't fit. They wouldn't do that. It doesn't work with the narrative they've established for them.
Not even remotely.
Yeah.
So backtracking a little, since we just sort of loosely stumbled our way into the beginning, I should, say what you already know. Going into this, the initial trailers were not bad. The TV spots that Hulu has been running incessantly every commercial break have been horrible. Like, they got me to hate this movie before I even saw it because...
Yeah. They gave you a prejudice.
They gave me a prejudice because they looked like they were very much... I mean, they cut together shots of her on the ground, and I'm pretty sure there was a voiceover that, if it was even in the movie, was an indistinct jumble among a bunch of voiceovers. Someone's like, stay down, and then a shot of her from the ending showdown that we could tell exactly where it was cut from, where she's like, I'm so tired of you telling me what I can't do. And they were trying to make it such, an empowerment, girl power movie, and they recut a lot of the lines in her first scene with Fury, like, you guys don't have a clue, do you? And a number of other lines out of context,
right.
to different, and a shot of then Nick Fury going, haha, and make him look like, oh, he's an idiot, all the guys in the movie are dumb, and she's superior, smug, and condescending to, like, they were driving the girl power, shall we put it, to not use any of the current modern pejoratives, that angle really hard to try to appeal to a certain more radical crowd. And they did it so successfully that it made it look to me like the movie was going to be terrible. So I was really leery going into this, just because they managed Pixar levels of butchering with their trailers and making a good movie not look good through horrible choices of how they put together the marketing.
Yes.
So that said, impressions of the movie.
No, I thought it was good. I thought it was more isolated than I thought it was going to be. It didn't have a lot of connections, which is like, it worked. It doesn't leave you with a lot to speculate about, like, oh, is this connected to that? Because it's kind of its own thing, which it probably should be.
Well, yeah.
And,
like I said to you in the theater, the one thing I did not expect this to be was a buddy cop movie with Nick Fury.
Oh, yeah.
But it was, and it was great.
All of that first part with her on Earth, driving around in, like these old 70s cars, that was all my favorite stuff, like all the 90s Earth stuff.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I felt like when she got there, and she broke loose, and she had her powers, and she got everybody off, that was great. It stumbled a little right at the end, where it got unfocused, like, and now she took out the thing that was chasing the people, and now she took out some missiles, and now she took out an accuser ship, and they're running, and now there's a confrontation with the guy. It's sort of like it lost focus, like it was just kind of throwing in set pieces and didn't quite know how it wanted to wrap things up.
Yeah, it was definitely like, once she unlocks her full powers, then there isn't anything that can stop her, which kind of makes you wonder, like, how it's gonna work out for her in Endgame, if the whole, like, they couldn't, narratively, there was nothing they could do with her after she unlocked her powers, because she's literally invincible and unstoppable, and more powerful than anything, so it's like every threat she faces.
Basically in Infinity War why they sidelined Thor for so long, because he brings down the curve, or brings you know what I mean? He's so far, like, her and Thor could now be taking on Thanos by themselves, and it'll be like, and here's Hawkeye.
So we might see we might see a little bit of nerfing, I feel like, of her, to bring her to Thor's level, because what we see in this movie, she would be more powerful than Thor, but they've said...
I mean, Thor did take the power of an entire sun in the last movie.
Never flown through a spaceship to destroy it. He'll usually, like, throw his hammer or something. You'd think if he could do that, he might do that.
I feel like he unlocked this power level at the end of Infinity War 2. Or even in at the end of the climax of Ragnarok.
When he gets the lightning.
Yeah, I feel like he's sort of there now. Neither of them could solo Thanos, but it feels like together, they pretty much got this.
All they got to do is have one of them look out for Peter Quill so he doesn't screw things up again. And the other
come on. That was... You know what?
I know. I
How
agree
about
with you
Doctor
about
Strange not screwing things up because he gets all sentimental over Tony?
That's the plan.
Peter had a feeling.
No, I know.
He was avenging his loved one. My wife got really angry about that too. It was very realistic to his character. The same way he lost it on Ego after finding out it was true to the character. Right. I usually hate things like that, but this one I bought because it was true to the character.
But that's what I'm saying. You can predict he'll do it again. So you have one of them watch him, and then
just give him the power so that he could go and he
could actually do something by punching Thanos.
Yeah,
slapping his face a little bit.
It is funny though to rank these people. It's like on power level. It's like Mantis can make godlike entities sleep. It's like we were talking about with the second Endgame trailer. I keep getting Infinity War and Endgame mixed up and trying to
Infinity Game.
Name wise in Infinity Game.
End War.
And like the second one, where I felt like they didn't give us much more than the first one, but it's got this big training montage, and it's like, everyone's doing the thing, and the powers, and here's the lightning, and then there's Black Widow going bang, 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 bang with a pistol to drop the clip.
She's gonna get a space pistol.
It's like, guys, you gotta... No, if you're trying to convince us all these things belong in one movie, showing her with a handgun is the worst way to do that.
She can do it faster than anyone else.
Right. Like, she's got her widow sting, she's got her martial arts. Sell us on those.
Yeah.
Don't show her using a pistol. A pistol is nothing. That's not even going to do anything to, like, the foot soldiers that were trying to come through the Wakandan shield. Like, a pistol is less than nothing. You got to get at least a rifle for those guys.
Works against the T'Chari.
Right. I guess it did. I guess
it worked okay.
But it's like, guys, we're beyond guns and arrows now. Right. If you're going to sell them as having contributions here, focus on their other attributes, not those. I
know we're trying to talk about Captain Marvel, but I wonder if those white suits that the internet is calling quantum suits are going to give them like some extra strength and stuff. Are they going to be like kind of Iron Man-y suits? Or are they just for traveling in the quantum realm, as the theory goes?
They, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, they specifically mentioned like time vortexes.
Yeah, right. It's clearly a setup.
Although I have to say, I kind of pictured this as a movie where they find a way to restore everyone that had been snapped. It would be very interesting if they time travel and just prevent it from happening, because that's really not the way I saw this going down. I saw this as more of a bring them back, not a go back to the events of the first film and change.
That's a good question. I feel like it'd be more satisfying if they bring them back.
Yeah. It would be more satisfying to have a reckoning with Thanos in a world where he has done this.
Well, because you can do it too. Right, exactly. Because you can do it one way where they fight Thanos, they bring him back, they have the confrontation with Thanos, but it's the Thanos that's done this already. Mm-hmm. Or you could go back, undo it, then go fight Thanos, or at the same time fight Thanos to stop him from doing it in the first place. You have another Thanos fight that way. But that Thanos, it doesn't have the same weight to that confrontation.
No.
Plus, then Gamora's stuff, like being stuck in the Soul Stone or whatever, like what's the payoff for that if that's not part of bringing them back? But
back to Captain Marvel. So, other than the ending falling apart a little, and like, again, the whole gunslinger thing with Jude Law, where it's like, da-da-da, and everything. It's like, why are you even doing this? He just flew through a spaceship. Like he's any kind of challenge whatsoever. Emotional, and that was the one part where I felt like, okay, that's a little agenda-y or whatever. She's like, I have nothing to prove to you. It's like, I think that's supposed to be, I have nothing to prove to, the men in my life. It's like, but you do, because he's your mentor, so you would actually have a decent reason to prove to him regardless.
I really liked that, because it kind of avoided something that I hate in movies, where they'll either be like, I have to prove that I'm morally better than you, or I have to prove that I'm like physically better than you by like fighting you in a fair fight or something. And it's like, you don't have to do that. If you can just win.
Well, I agree.
That's fine.
But I would have liked it if they'd still acknowledged, just because everything was a lie doesn't mean that I don't still have those feelings. Yeah, you still mean something to me, and it really hurts me that this is, you know what I mean?
That's true. They did have a bit of a emotional setup for their relationship at the beginning that was never carried through. Yeah,
it would have been nice to still acknowledge that instead of just being like, you mean nothing to me now because I am free and I am empowered and like literally empowered with lightning bolts. Like, it would have been like, yeah, I'm still conflicted about this.
Yeah.
And I hate you, and I'm not going to kill you, because what you meant to me, but I hate that you betrayed me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I feel like
you suck, man. Why?
I was trying to figure out what Carol's character arc is supposed to be, and I felt like not the end that you're talking about, but just before that is the part that I felt like was really rushed, where they have the little montage of her flashbacks of her like getting up after she's knocked down, and like it's very clear imagery. You know what they're going for.
Yeah, but
she's learning.
Quite feel sold.
Exactly, because like you can get that they're going for. She's learned now that what makes her strong. She gets back up after she's knocked down. She's gonna get knocked down, but she always gets back up. It's very basic stuff, but they didn't properly set up her struggling with that. Like when she's fighting Jude Law. What's his character's name?
I don't know. I was trying to find that toward the
Everyone thought he was going to be Marvell, but no. So when she's fighting him at the beginning, it seems like she already knows that. Mm-hmm. She does get knocked down by him, and she keeps getting back up. And what they feel like they're setting up at the beginning is she needs to learn to control her power. She needs to learn to control her emotions. She just kind of gets out of control at sometimes, and that's going to hurt her. But it doesn't actually hurt her. They go a different direction with it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I felt like that. There's like just one quick scene that's supposed to emphasize her character arc that was just really rushed.
Yeah, and it almost felt like maybe there's some material deleted there.
Yeah.
That was setting that up better.
Could have been.
But yeah, that's the thing. The whole climax, after that scene, or maybe even now that you're saying that, including that scene, felt like it was just kind of a jumble of stuff thrown at us. Like, it wasn't building toward a single climax. It was just a bunch of set pieces. Uh-huh. And it feels like that's because they didn't know emotionally quite where they wanted to take it.
Possibly.
Or they took it there in that moment, even if they didn't set it up well, and they didn't really know where to take it after that. So it kind of felt like, again, the ending was a little... it didn't fall apart in terms of letting down the movie or being unwatchable.
No.
But it's just like, there was never that moment that it cohered into that that's what this is about. That they... Exactly. It just kind of was like... and it's done.
And if there is stuff, if it is because they cut stuff out, I could see why they did, because pacing-wise, if you look at the whole movie, it did need that to just be a fast-paced action thing, and now it's over, because you're already at that point in the movie where you're like, you know how it's going to end. You don't want to drag it out and like add all this stuff back in. So I could see how there could be some deleted scenes there.
Right. Which is, again, why I felt like the whole Jude Law thing was a little anticlimactic, because it's like, yeah, her like blowing up all the space fleet stuff, owning her powers,
she blew up
and then
one ship.
Well, but she blew up a bunch of fighters and missiles.
Fighters.
Doing all of that and then being there and like staring them down, energy burst, and they decide to turn and run. That was the climax. So throwing in the thing after that almost felt like, well, what was that even about? If it was going to be like an emotional thing, but again, it's not like it was her dealing with the feelings of betrayal. It was almost just like to set up her new attitude, and you didn't really need that, because I felt like we already got that from the scenes beforehand. Like, that could have been a valid emotional climax after the action climax, but they didn't treat it that way. They kind of threw it away for a joke of him trying too hard to get her to fight,
I mean, it was a good joke, but it was
predictable.
Yeah.
And then it was a joke, and then it was just like, whatever, and she sends him off. And it felt like, you either should have made that a little more of something to be the emotional resolution of the movie, or you maybe should have cut it. or had it happen, and then the missiles start showing up and had her go scare off Ronan.
What would be your one-stop fix, your quick fix to fix the Jude Law scene? Just the Jude Law scene.
Oh gosh, on the spot. Well, like I said, I feel like you just have it more emotional instead of. I feel like this was the this just water off my back now. I don't care anymore. No, she's got to care to give that scene weight. You got to deal with, you were my friend, you were my only anchor when I had nothing. You were my mentor. Gotcha. You betrayed me. Deal with that, even if just for a few seconds. Like, that to me would fix it. And
so
that
instead of, I don't gotta prove nothing to you, have her get angry a little bit, have her get upset about it.
Yeah, and even if you don't have her necessarily get into her head, like, he doesn't, once again, he tries to manipulate her and it fails completely. That's fine, but deal with a little more. Deal with, she's had her whole life stolen. He betrayed, he was her best friend and now he's her worst enemy. How is she trying to reconcile? Do a little bit of the turmoil, a little bit of, have it out with him, tell him off. Like, then have her say, I don't have anything to prove to you anymore.
Okay.
Like when he's saying, have him bring up her past in more of than just a jokey, now you can prove it to, I'm so proud of you way. Have her call him on that. Have her say, you don't get to do that because you're, you lied to me and have, but then have her say, but you also still, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you mean everything. You were everything to me. How could you do this to me? Oh, you just need a little more build up in between those two moments.
Yeah.
He tries to manipulate her. She says, I don't care anymore. You need some meat in there of actually showing the turmoil of her emotions, of coming to terms with everything her life has been for 6 years versus everything she now knows those 6 years to be. That's what that scene to me needs. You could still have the same beats, but you just gotta, it's doing her a disservice as a character, as a person, to not deal with how she's feeling about discovering how she's been manipulated, because we never really get that on screen.
Yeah, the fact that we don't get that and she doesn't react that way at any point kind of makes it seem like she isn't really regaining her memories. She's just kind of accepting the new knowledge about her past that she's getting from other people.
Could be.
But she's not feeling it emotionally because she doesn't have the memories back. But I don't know, it's unclear if she actually regains her memories. That's the way it comes across because she doesn't act emotionally.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I just feel like if the scene is going to be the emotional climax of the movie that it feels like it's positioned to be, that's what you need to make it that. To make it the culmination of a struggle instead of a coda brush off. Yeah.
It really felt like a scene to set up him as a returning villain, Jude Law.
Right.
Because he gets away scot-free, he gets away so easily, and he's got unfinished business now with Carol. He's got, vengeance to enact.
Which is funny because, he really doesn't.
No.
She treated him very fairly.
Yeah, all things considered. She messed up his war, but,
Yeah, she messed up his war, but she could have messed him up. She kind of had every justification in movie terms.
I mean, hey, if Jude Law's coming back, we can get a scene with him and Iron Man, have Sherlock Holmes and Watson reunite, and then we can have the other Sherlock Holmes and Watson unite.
If they didn't do anything with Bilbo and Gollum, they're not going to do anything with Sherlock Holmes. That was all they needed was one line.
Yeah, they were even in the movie together and everything.
That said, I feel like all this dissecting the 5 minutes that don't work in the movie make it sound like we disliked it a lot more.
No, that was really the only problem part for me, was a little bit at the end there.
Everything else was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say great just because this is sort of the post-rush, and hey, there are flaws that didn't become apparent until we talked them through. So maybe in retrospect, I don't want to assign it its place
Initial
on the canon
reactions.
5 minutes after seeing it.
Right.
But initial reaction, I thought it was great.
I thought so too, yeah.
At the start, when they're doing the disorienting stuff with their backstory, I was like, I'm not in the mood for one of these what's going on,
all the
deals.
Exposition at the start.
All the exposition at the start. To be fair, when it's like Supreme Intelligence, AI leader of the Kree Empire, I'm like, wow. That's a lot of exposition to pack into 5 words of an on-screen caption. That's so gutsy that I respect that.
Yeah, this really was ambitious to try to set up this entire world in one movie without spending the whole movie doing it.
And it's not even the same huge cosmological setup that we've gotten in the other Marvel movies. It's a whole new one.
Yeah, exactly. There isn't a lot of crossover with Guardians.
They established it very economically, and that was impressive. I was more, honestly, just with her jumbled backstory. And even at first when they're scrolling through her memories, being like, no, just give it to me straight. I don't want to guess at what all this means. But I felt like by the end of that scene, and they sort of had it creepy where Lawson just keeps coming up to her as another one is walking away. I was okay, you know what? They've done this artfully enough. It's kind of won me over. And I felt like her and Jude Law as characters, their interaction at the start, even before she goes to see the AI, and then going to see the Supreme Leader and the definite, not really subtle, but effective hints of creepy totalitarian, for the good of the state, brainwashing. They threw in, like, all of that. They established right from the get-go very likable, relatable characters. And I appreciated that a lot. That, like, they were throwing in a bunch of, like, even when she sat up in bed after waking up from the dream, it was at a weird Dutch angle that you couldn't even tell which direction was up. And I felt like that was, I say clever, but it was also obviously really obvious, so it wasn't that clever. But you know what I mean? It's filmmaking technique. I feel like this movie used a lot of intelligent filmmaking shorthand, like you were talking about the getting up, that communicates clearly, but has no subtlety whatsoever. But
they know what works. Marvel knows what works, and they do it.
No, but usually they use those techniques, like in Infinity War. They used known tropes and techniques, but they at least tried to hide them a little. Here it's just like, and now we will use the Dutch angle to indicate that our character is disoriented. But it works. You know exactly what they're doing.
Right, and they didn't overdo it. It's just
and they emphasized her. No, they didn't overdo it. They just did it really blatantly, obviously. Just like the getting up. It's like, wow, you're not even trying to hide what this is. But okay, I get it.
We all understood it from the trailer. They had that in the trailer.
But you communicated it. I know what you're saying to me, so okay, I'll accept the fact that you just decided to come right out and say it. But I understand it, so we're good. You're not Alfred Hitchcock, but okay, I got it. You've communicated clearly. That's what matters. But I guess what I was saying is they throw in a lot of disorientation at us right at the start. That's lot of like, what? I don't know what's going on here, and I appreciated a lot that they gave us the solid connection between her and Jude Law. That they were both characters that were three-dimensional, that were engaging, that had good chemistry, that they gave us that as an anchor. Very much what he was to her in the story itself, they were to us in the movie.
Right.
And I appreciate that they gave us that to center us on the film, to be like, there's a lot you don't understand yet, but we've given you something you can relate to. Two people with a relationship, not a romantic one. They've got banter, they've got history. This will see you through until everything else makes sense. That was very nicely done. I also just felt like, though, when she goes and looks out the window, my first thought was, oh, this is, what's it called from Ragnarok? Like, wow, do all of Marvel's alien planets look alike? Sakaara, yeah. I wanted to say Xandar. It's like, no, that's the other one that looked just like that.
That's true. They got us. They have established the look.
The window frames that had like some weird molded shapes, like there was like some molding that made a star-shaped pattern, and there was glass in the middle of that too. I was like, that could have been Hulk's window from.
Yeah, like, I mean, and Xandar had like a star symbol that they used for the Nova Corps. That's very, very similar.
I still love that the Nova Corps got completely steamrolled by Thanos, and they couldn't keep the Purple Stone safe at all, and they didn't even show us. It's just like, nope, sorry, Glenn Close. You don't even get a cameo of, like, hauling yourself across
don't forget John C. Reilly.
Broken floor with fires in the background. I'd be like, Thanos has the stone. No, you got nothing. It's like,
I hope they show up.
I heard they knocked over the Nova Corps last week. Yeah, and that's it.
Maybe they'll show up in Endgame. I mean, if they time travel as a way of preventing it all from happening.
That would be interesting if they time travel and actually fight Thanos at each of the points where he's going to get the stones. Because almost all of them happened off screen. They could save the Asgardians.
That's true.
They could save, the Nova Corps. They could save the people at Nowhere, because most of those did happen off screen. That would be really interesting.
Yeah.
They could even have a big climactic showdown. Well, no, the climactic showdown still has to be about getting the gem from Vision's head.
So they go to Xandar, they fight Thanos, get the Power Stone, and then Thanos is just like, well, on to the next one. And then they go there. He just gives up on the Power Stone?
Well, no, he's still pursuing it, but he goes for the next one because he knows he needs power to fight power.
Ah, yes.
And it would be interesting if they go and they're taking each of the stones for themselves.
Yeah. And then Iron Man puts them in an Iron Man
But they really are not going to make the sacrifice to get the Soul Stone.
No.
And you have to, then you run into Vision. I feel like still climactic. Although I have to say, time travel does feel like the only way, unless they really do pull that Shuri had made it farther in the process and done enough.
I think it's inevitable that Vision ends up without the stone in his head.
Yes.
However he gets there.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like time travel either that or Shuri managed to make a backup before, they broke into her lab, is like the only way that Vision gets out of this alive.
Yeah.
Because I really don't know if he will be, because Vision dying...
No, he's going to cross over to the TV show.
Well, that's true. That could just be a prequel, though. But, yeah, no, that's true. I still think, is it just going to be Loki and Heimdall? I mean, but see, they could time travel and fix that, too! Time travel solves everything!
Yeah, exactly.
Because that refugee ship after Ragnarok is like a bitter taste in the mouth. So it kind of feels like, well, they could fix that with if they do time traveling. But,
I think they will. I don't know.
But back to the movie we actually saw.
Yeah, so I guess everybody had just assumed that S.H.I.E.L.D. had the Tesseract the whole time, which I guess they kind of did, since Mar-Vell was working for S.H.I.E.L.D., so that's how she got it. Or working in conjunction with S.H.I.E.L.D. anyways, with the Air Force. She was building her light engine.
Right.
So that's, I guess, how she got it from S.H.I.E.L.D., because it was Stark's dad that...
Yeah, Howard Stark had it. I guess, maybe S.H.I.E.L.D. loaned it out and then they considered it lost.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so when we first see, Carol shoot the power source in the jet, I was like, that's blue and glowy. Could that be something related to
the funny.
Tesseract?
I did not make any...
But you couldn't see the cube or anything. It was just like blue glowy stuff.
Yeah.
So
I didn't make that connection at all. That's funny.
And then at the end...
But that was a clever way to have her get her powers.
Yeah. And so there's one person who has her powers from the Mind Stone. Scarlet Witch has her powers from the Mind Stone. Quicksilver got his powers from the Mind Stone. Vision gets his powers from the Mind Stone. That Mind Stone's the way to go. If you want powers.
But Carol had hers from the
the Space Stone.
The Space Stone, yeah. So
wait
it's a different stone. Because they didn't have Loki's staff.
Loki's staff was the one I was thinking of. Yeah. So that gives out powers 3 times the rate.
Now, this would be interesting, though, if they end up destroying the Infinity Gems, and it's like Captain Marvel, Scarlet Witch, Vision all get depowered from it. I don't think they would.
I feel like
it
has to be permanent. Yeah, I don't think they would.
But then they have to find a new power source or something. I don't think they would do that.
No, and I don't think they're going to destroy the... I mean, we're back off topic, but I don't think they're going to destroy the gems. I don't know.
They'll just still be out there?
I feel like they're going to give them to Adam Warlock for safekeeping.
No one can keep these things safe. I believe Thanos has proven that.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest unanswered question. What's going to happen in Endgame is what's going to happen to the stones. Especially since, that's the Eye of Agamotto. You can't have Doctor Strange without the eye. But,
well, maybe all you have to do is destroy one of them.
And because then he couldn't have all of them.
Yeah. Because you need...
Which they did in Infinity
you need
War.
the soul plan. You need the soul gem.
Right.
For Adam Warlock.
Yeah.
You need the Eye of Agamotto. That purple one's expendable.
True.
Tesseract is expendable.
It just shoots a big laser.
The Mind Stone feels like it would be nice to keep it around. I feel like Vision will lose his sweet forehead laser. But, you could theoretically dispense with that one. So all you have to do is keep a couple of them around.
Yeah, there's a couple that could be gone.
You don't need the ether, the red one.
Oh, the ether. That's what I couldn't think of what the other one was. No, it's the most forgettable. I'm just of all the stones.
But I'm like, how does he not just? When he can control reality, why does he even need the other 5 stones? Why couldn't he just... How can anyone fight him when he can control reality?
He can control reality, but he can't sense and be all-knowing without the other ones in combination, because he needs the Space Stone to be able to affect all of reality at the same time.
Right.
He needs the Mind Stone to be able to connect to all living beings, or maybe that's the Soul Stone. The Mind Stone maybe gives him omnipresence. What's the one where you know everything?
Omnipotence.
Because that's his mind. The Time Stone allows him to do it quickly.
Is it quick? I still don't get how this works.
With just the Reality Stone, he would still be limited by his perception.
We want to start driving shortly, but I can hold this.
It's gonna get pretty shaky around here.
Shaky cam. Oh, God. Wow! That just crushed me. So, the camera fell. Surprisingly solid when it hits your finger. Captain Marvel. So, we have not really talked about anything in the middle hour and 40 minutes of the movie. We've only been talking about the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes.
All right.
It was fun. I liked it.
Let's take it from the top.
They didn't make Nick Fury as dumb as the trailers made it look like they would.
They made Nick Fury great again.
He was Whoa, hey, getting political here. He was never stopped being great to begin with.
Honestly, okay, no, that is true. But listen, I love Samuel L. Jackson, but he does a lot of movies and he doesn't always bring his A game. I'll just throw it out there. Sometimes he does it for the paycheck.
Wow. That is
I'm not faulting him. He's a great actor.
That is controversial.
Is it? I don't want to ruffle any feathers. All I'm saying is this is probably one of the best performances that I enjoyed the most.
You are going to offend all of the SJWs, the Samuel Jackson Warriors.
Where's the L? SLJW.
SLJW.
Well, I don't want to do that because I'm a big fan. I honestly am. But I did watch that movie where he played the president and he gets stuck in the woods, and it was not his finest work.
I don't know which one that is, but sounds amazing.
Yeah. Damn it.
Oh, I'm Captain Marvel. That lens flare would not stay in the right place. So this time, he was definitely bringing more of his A game.
He was absolutely, and I mean, the writing for him was great. I really enjoyed the take of him being like a little bit fresher faced, a little bit less
weighed
knowledgeable.
down.
Yeah, less weighed down. I fully expected the cat to scratch his eye out. As soon as they introduced the concept of it happening in the movie, I was like, it's going to be the cat. Because the cat was already in the picture by that point.
I was not thinking that far ahead. I did not see that coming.
And he had a line in a previous movie. He was like, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye. And it was like...
It's true. Okay, this one.
And it's like, who in this movie did he trust more than the cat? So clearly. No, I did expect it, but I also kind of expected them to make a bigger deal out of it, about him losing his eye, because it kind of just like, the cat scratched him when he was picking up the cat. And then in the next scene, his eye's swollen shut, but he's like, oh, it's fine, it's just a scratch. And then cut to him looking at glass eyes in a case. And it's like, okay, I guess it scratched him pretty good. I did like him lying to Coulson about how it happened, though. And
did you notice
it a mystery?
That his eye patch was held on with Scotch tape?
I did see that.
He
and it wasn't like
Scotch
a real
tape.
eye patch, it was just like a bandage. Yeah, it's Scotch tape. And I liked that the continuity of the scratch being, it was recognizable as the same scar pattern that he has in the movie. So those Quagga-Flogrians, whatever that cat creature's species was called.
Wasn't it just like a
Florian? They'll scratch your eye out, kid.
I feel like some people that are more anti-Captain Marvel and feel like there's an agenda will be bothered by her being the namesake of the Avengers. But
I thought that was very clever.
It was very clever, and I thought it was fun.
If it was what inspired him to begin this quest, it makes perfect sense.
And I did like the idea that it was not being able to protect the Tesseract, because that's exactly where they came into play.
And I like that he titled his document below that, the subtitle Phase 1, a little Easter egg there, a little behind the scenes knowledge.
Coulson, I liked him in this one, that they were nicely setting up how he would become who he would become. You know what I mean? Like, show why Nick Fury was so attached to him.
Yeah.
And
they have a little bit of a past.
And show how he sort of came to look up to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was only a couple short scenes, and I wish he'd been in it more, but I really liked what they did.
Yeah, they did. Like, he like lets them go. He sides with them against direct orders because he kind of has a gut feeling that
because the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. is never not bad.
Yeah, that's true. You can't trust the director unless the director's Nick Fury. But he doesn't stay the director for very long. So, I really like the bit at the start where he completely misses all the action because a Skrull takes over his form, so we think Coulson's standing there, but he's actually in the blockbuster the whole time.
Right.
And he misses all the Skrull action and he comes out. A good detail that they didn't have the Skrull react to anything that was happening.
Yeah, like I was questioning, why is Coulson not
He's
even...
just stone-faced there.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that at the time, but they made it work. Man, when they were killing off all of the Skrulls, like, okay, you know? And then they became good guys.
And you're like...
And then they killed off the scientist one. It's like, no, you can't just do that so lightly anymore. You can't just throw them away like disposable people anymore.
About them. Especially the scientist guy.
Why did that guy even have to... Why did he even have to do that? It didn't even do any good. It delayed them by, like, 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it set up Jude Law like, okay, now we know he's bad. because he killed this nice science man.
Good job with the, like, I guess proximity sensors or something, Marvel Lab. Like,
right.
Way to sense them approaching.
Right.
You understand why the Skrull are losing the war, like I was saying. Their tech is terrible. You shoot the wall of one room and it made the whole big ship blow up, and then you shoot the control panel of one pod and it makes the whole pod structurally fall apart in re-entry.
You can, it makes you sympathize with them in hindsight.
You just damage one little piece and the whole thing.
They're being oppressed. Their one advantage is the shape-shifting, so they use it, and now you understand. Now you
their tech really does suck. But all these things I was sort of complaining about, it's like, no, actually that kind of works, you know?
This is the kind of a movie I feel like you might enjoy more the second time round. Where
although you'd also feel bad with some of the Skrull deaths.
No, that's true. Especially like Captain Marvel mercilessly blasting the guy who's impersonating the director. At the time you cheer because she saves Fury when he's fighting the director guy, but then in retrospect, he's like an innocent, trying to protect his family guy. Yeah. Just mercilessly blasted.
I mean, he did mention that his hands were filthy from the war. It's not like he's innocent.
No. Doing his best. I'll need to look this up, but I'm pretty sure the guy who plays the director, there's something about his mannerisms in the Skrull form. I think it's the same guy under the makeup.
I mean, it would have been pretty darn good, like, lip sync dubbing when he does the voice if it wasn't him.
Yeah.
Now you're Captain Marvel.
Now I'm Captain Marvel. Yes. Oh, am I glowing?
Right.
Am I aware I'm glowing?
You know you're glowing, right?
When she goes Super Saiyan, she reaches power level 9,000. I don't know Dragon Ball Z. Those are the two references I know.
It is definitely one of those things where just like, well, you're going to have trouble finding a challenge for her in these movies. Yeah. Like, unfortunately, most of the Avengers are now going to become Batman and the Justice League.
Yeah, even more so than Vision. She is now the Superman power level of the group.
Vision, Thor, and Captain Marvel. But at least they took Vision out of the equation. You do need to get over. This must be the part our audience hates.
I usually cut the direction bits out.
Then they'll just hate all the jump cuts. Why is it jump cutting? Why?
We said controversial things, and I had to cut them out.
So speaking of controversial things, let's address the elephant in the room with this movie.
What is that?
And that is a lot of people saying, oh, the SJWs are taking over. Not the Samuel Jackson Warriors, but, the other one. The radical feminists, this is all about, so, I get it, all right? I do get it. I understand where those people are coming from. The feeling that the social politics are overpowering good characters, good writing, that it's just all about pushing an agenda and not about what's actually telling a good story anymore. I do see places where it feels to me like that's happening. Like, honestly, I don't feel like Rey from, Force Awakens is a character. Don't get me wrong, the actress is very charismatic. It's not like she's unlikable, but she's not really a character. She's not really a person. She's kind of
If you say any more sentences about...
I'm not gonna...
cutting it out.
I'm not going to talk about how terrible The Last Jedi is.
We're done talking about The Last Jedi.
Which is funny, because we recorded like literally 5 hours worth of podcast, and then we just never released it at all.
It's so tiring.
It is. I'm tired of talking about it. But my point being, to the people that feel that way, it's not like I deny those things exist. I totally see them. And I see people saying that about this one. Brie Larson isn't very good. She was the mistake to play this character. This is just a radical feminist movie. This is just an SJW movie. I really don't feel like it was.
No.
They didn't push it. There were 2 or 3 moments all in that last 10 minutes. That was it. And even that was like, each of those moments you could take them as just being a moment within the story, not having any ulterior motive either. And the whole rest of the film, not at all. There is not any male belittlement. That they throw in a couple of male jerks in her life in the montage, like the guy it's called the cockpit, right? Where it's I'd hate him too.
Right, sure.
I'm not even a woman, and I'd find that annoying. Like
I don't think he'd say it to you, but
probably not. But if I saw him saying it to someone else, I'd be annoyed on their behalf.
Yeah, no.
But that subtext isn't there. There isn't like, oh, look how much better she is than all her male like. Everything that people are worrying about isn't there. And I kind of feel like the people that are saying, oh, this movie sucks, this is terrible, she's bad, and it's like...
I feel like those people are pushing their own agenda.
Yes, you want to justify your pre-existing agenda to see an agenda here and hate it. This is the way you do empowerment well. You make a movie that isn't preachy. You're just like, hey, look, here's a superhero that's just as great as any superhero, and she's a woman. This is the way to do it. You don't make a thing of it. You just show it. It's just like in the original Star Trek with... who are on the bridge of the Enterprise, that even Martin Luther King said, you've got to keep doing this because this is showing people you just show it.
At the end...
To anyone that's out there worrying about it, it's not that. It's not the thing that the internet is exploding about.
At the end of the movie, there's a line, I forget who delivers it, and maybe that's important for context, but somebody to Captain Marvel says, you're only human, and she gets back up, and she's like, yeah, that's right, I am only human, and then she's like, oh,
and that's
punch, right. The line wasn't, you're only a woman, and then she's like, yes, but here's what a woman can do.
Right.
It's about her
are not,
as a person.
Yeah, it is.
Finding her strength.
It's not, there's not a social agenda subtext in it. And like the people that are social media reacting against it, I can almost guarantee you they didn't see it, or if they saw it, they weren't actually watching. They were just playing the movie that they'd already designed in their heads to hate.
Yeah.
And seeing that.
If that's what you see, that's more about you in this movie.
Controversial stuff over.
Yeah. So let's see. We talked about the first 15 minutes. We talked about...
Oh, so this wasn't just an origin for Nick Fury and Coulson. This was the origin of the Quinjet.
Yes.
With its predecessor, the Quadjet.
The beautiful Quadjet. The chunky...
That was so... I was like... when they started modifying it with the alien tech, I was like, oh, is this where the Quinjet comes from?
Yeah.
That could have been kind of fun and clever. But actually calling it a Quadjet on screen, it's like, oh gosh, you guys.
So they add a rocket later. They add a jet.
You didn't have to spell it out for us. We got it already.
It's true.
That was the clumsy, social agenda right there. They were pushing Quinjet.
I love the Quadjet.
The Quadjet.
No, I love the design of it, honestly. I love the clunky. I love everything they went out of their way to make look clunky in 90s, like the fingerprint scanner that looks like a flatbed and paper scanner with the going across it.
They didn't overdo it, I felt like, with the 90s. Like,
they didn't overdo it.
They didn't even do the dial-up sound at any point. Because honestly, the 90s was so primitive with computers is incredibly cliched and overdone these days. We're in a retro craze. Everyone pokes fun at that. They didn't go for the low-hanging fruit. They did that joke, and they did the CD loading up, which was really funny, specifically because they hadn't overdone the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Joke. You lose it if you do.
They didn't have a giant phone. They didn't have any of those, and they did a Radio Shack joke. I liked that the 90s stuff was not revisiting the same well that every movie that's doing 90s stuff is doing these. 90s technology and culture jokes have become cliche in this decade of retro movie making.
They didn't do any part where
they didn't do any of those.
Where they applied 50 million VHS static effects to a video at some point, like every YouTube channel is doing now. Way overdo it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
they used the 90s for a few fresh jokes that felt clever, and that was it.
Yeah.
Like that, and I liked the nice touch that in the store, and when she stops and I see the hook VHS over the background, I'm like, wow, someone must have had a lot of fun picking out all of these movies to populate.
Yeah.
But she picks up the right stuff. And it's nice, subtle, oh, she's a test pilot. You know, does she remember? That was a very nice it was thematic. So I appreciated. If they handled the gender politics with subtlety, they handled the 90s with even more subtle. And that's been the thing that the thing that makes me love a piece of media more than anything right now in our unsubtle, extremely divided, people throwing terms like SJW around it, internet pejorative, even talking about social politics gets you a label. Anything doing anything with subtlety automatically wins me over. I appreciate it.
Definitely. No, this movie earns a lot of goodwill.
Yeah. And again, not even just with gender politics, but literally with its setting.
You definitely.
And I really did like the dynamic between her and Fury. That just reminded me that they were, bantering, sort of mischievous, intrigued by each other equals. From the get-go, they didn't have a big falling out moment like I expected. Like, you called S.H.I.E.L.D. How can, They left as friends. They didn't have the second act separation. They just, right all along, it was a buddy cop movie. And I love that.
Think about this. The snap affected the entire universe. So Carol's out there. She sees half of everybody turn to dust. She gets the call, and that's where she goes. She goes to Fury 20 years later. That's the kind of relationship they set up.
We started talking about how the ending stumbled a little, but like you said, this movie earned so much goodwill. I really appreciated how they took every fear I could have had about their handling of the subject material, and they did it differently, and every structural cliche I could have expected from a Marvel movie, and they did things. Like, the only thing that I expected as a cliche was when the head Skrull got shot. Because I was like, oh, there was an action sequence. The hatch is closing very slowly.
His back
They've turned
is
their
awfully
back
vulnerable.
to it. They're not worried, and they're taking a quiet moment.
Movie stuff.
He's going to get shot.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
They didn't even kill him. So, even then, it subverted
just to
my
add a little bit of
expectations.
tension.
Because killing him in front of his kid, that would have been, wow, sudden downer. So yeah, they avoided Marvel cliches. They avoided 2000s retro 90 cliches. They avoided social politics cliches. So that in itself is an achievement.
The kid, her friend's daughter.
Yeah, Lieutenant Troublemaker, whatever she called her. I feel like she's got to come back as an adult character. They
set her up too well
in the next, either in Endgame or in the next Captain Marvel movie.
Right.
But yeah, it would be very interesting to see if any more of the characters from this will come back. And by the way, people talked about this as a Ronan the Avenger prequel. Like,
he gets
seriously.
one on-screen scene where he's actually on camera and a couple hologram shots.
Yeah, hilarious how little he was in it.
It really, well, Coulson too. I mean, everybody that they set up as like, oh, they're bringing this character in, except for Fury, didn't really get much.
And I think part of that is because they were trying to play closer to the chest because the villain was a surprise villain. And, spoilers, by the way.
Yeah.
And, they didn't even show her, fighting anyone in particular and everything because, of course, they would have had to show her fighting all of her teammates.
That's true.
But they did a good job with that. And, it's funny. Maybe that's partly why they played up the, see what makes her a hero, her memory thing, and sort of more of the empowerment angle in the trailers. Because they couldn't actually play up the actual plot because it would have spoiled the twist. Which is the same thing with Endgame right now. That Marvel is making a masterwork out of, like, well, you can only use a very small section of the film to market
You can
this.
use the first 2 seconds of the movie.
Yeah. And I did appreciate what they did with her powers. They didn't have a big deal where she loses them in the middle.
Oh,
They made it a quest.
Almost did.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, we can take it away, but it turns out it was a restraining bolt.
Yeah, I appreciated that. And I was, once we found out that she was there at the core explosion, I was like, they're just restraining her powers. There's got to be a big moment where she
a big reveal
pulls
there.
that.
Yeah.
But I like that she did that by mind, you know what I mean? And it short-circuited, like, that was a cool way of doing it. And a believable one, because if she just pulled it out with, like, trailing gore, I feel like it would have been like,
no,
they probably would have been safeguards into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked that they made it a quest movie, so that it's like, well, all her powers aren't going to do her any good because she needs to find something, They structured it in such a way that it wasn't like Thor, where he's like powerless for most of the movie and then he gets his lightning powers. It wasn't, so-and-so and then you get this. It's like, no. She had it all along. Yeah, I guess she went up to a higher level of it during the course of the movie. But you know what I mean?
Right. No, it's true. That's what makes it not an origin story. They promised us no more origin stories. It's not about her gaining her power, so it's not an origin story.
There wasn't a big second act depowering where she had to go it alone, because it usually that's about seeing her character shine through. And this was about seeing it shine through in a different way and her discovering what it was, know? And there wasn't a big second act falling out with her partner because, again, that's not about what it was. He was there to provide, an anchor and relatability and someone for her to talk to. So them coming together and having their bond at the end wasn't the focus of the movie. Therefore, they didn't have to break that in order to reform it. So I just like that it structurally didn't have any of the second act things that you expected.
Yeah.
Too often there's like, oh, here's the hero. They're cool.
Right.
They're doing stuff. Oh, now they're nothing. And
Right.
you just got to see who they are. They're okay. No, they can be cool again.
Marvel definitely gets accused of using the formula.
Yeah.
And just sticking with the formula. And this definitely mixed it up.
It mixed it up. It let her be that same
Yeah.
person all throughout, and it made the movie about
Right.
something different. And it didn't even feel the need to be like, here's the big, heavy sledgehammer blow revelation in the middle. Like, it was a revelation that changed things around, but it was one that she could keep going with. It gave her a new purpose instead of being like, I must reconcile this, come to terms with it, and now I can be who. It's like, no, this just gives me new direction.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that it didn't have a traditional second act, and it didn't need one.
Right.
Because it was a different kind of movie.
It was a different kind of story.
All through everything we've been talking about, I feel like that could be the tagline of this podcast. It was a different kind of story.
And
I really
and
appreciate
listen
that.
up, Star Wars, the franchise. Even though her character arc was not the point of the story, she still had one.
She still had one.
You can do that.
And look, she was very self-sufficient, and I don't know if she did really need rescuing at any point during the movie, which was my complaint with Rey, that she didn't face any struggles, but she did face struggles.
She absolutely faced struggles. She had to fight.
She was defeated a few times and actually had to, well, I mean, I guess Rey was too by Deus Ex Machina. Sleep. By the way, I won't have this power again in any of the other...
Right. It'd be too handy.
But, like, am I talking myself into saying, no, she's just as bad as Rey? I don't think so, because even though I can't define what quality it is, she had challenges that she had to overcome in a different way.
Yeah.
And she had growth. She had change. She had... I wish I could put together a better case as to what makes her different from Rey right now, because I keep being like, well, Rey found out about her parents, and that shook her worldview. Well,
right.
you know, but...
It worked on an emotional level. Sometimes that's enough for a movie.
Yeah. It worked on an emotional level in a way that I feel like Rey's didn't.
Yeah.
And it didn't unlock her full power level right at the start, and it didn't unlock it for no reason. She didn't just have it for nothing, just because. She had to struggle to grow to reach that point, to unlock that. And she had to...
But you see, Carol, the power was within you all along.
We should, on our drive home...
Yeah.
revisit this, and hopefully
right.
I'll have a better, more put together case as to what makes her different from Rey.
Or you will have decided you hate the movie.
Or I will have, yeah.
That
oh no, I
happens
talked myself out of it. What? I thought it was good.
No.
But
Hang
now
on
I'm
to this
looking at
feeling.
Rey and she's the same. I hate this
Hang
movie.
on to the feeling.
I was talking about beforehand that this is the most I don't care movie because it's here like a month from Endgame. It just feels like that thing you're trying to look around like, yeah, okay, now get out of the way.
Honestly,
so I can see what's behind
this is the
you.
best time for this movie.
But-
if you're going to have one that's isolated, do it right before the movie that you literally can't have anything right before. You know?
I would have said do it right after Infinity War where the
Could've
end
worked,
credit
maybe.
scene was all hyped up. So I felt like this was like the I don't care movie, but it's like, now I've seen it and I do care.
It justified its own existence.
It did, exactly.
That's what a movie needs to do.
It was worth seeing. It was
Exactly.
It was a worthwhile entry, not just a stepping stone on the way to the next Avengers movie, and not just a lightweight
Very true.
throwaway.
Very true.
Yeah, very worth seeing. Okay, so following up the question of Captain Marvel versus Rey.
Okay.
So
Bring it home for us.
I was actually having a little trouble with this because, you know, one of my big complaints with Rey was that she never really had to be rescued by anyone else. She was completely self-sufficient. Captain Marvel, actually the same.
Yeah.
And Rey had a bunch of powers that her backstory sort of justified, and yeah, Captain Marvel is sort of the same. So I looked up what the definition of a Mary Sue was. And basically it is a character with no real weaknesses or flaws. And thinking back on Captain Marvel, the only thing I could come up with as a weakness or a flaw was she isn't as good at hand-to-hand combat as Jude Law, which is... So, actually, she kind of fails the Mary Sue test and anything that I can quantify with Rey. The only thing is, as far as I could tell, so does Captain America. Superman would, if not for the fact that in the first movie he does have to get rescued from the kryptonite once. But most of Superman's movies, he does too. So I kind of feel like being self-sufficient, being the one doing the rescuing, generally having a bunch of powers that are justified by the backstory and aren't, you know, gained through a thing, and generally having few weaknesses or flaws is kind of a superhero trope. Tony Stark is kind of a rare exception, and even then you look at like Iron Man 3, maybe even all 3 of the Iron Mans, and he still rescues himself every time. So I kind of feel like, yes, by the, usual rules of Mary Sue and the usual, like, the character tropes that were a problem with Rey, Captain Marvel falls into those, but so does everybody else. The real problem is maybe that Rey is following superhero tropes in an ensemble sci-fi movie, that it isn't justified to use those tropes. I don't know. Well, you said something good, that in a way Captain Marvel is just a retelling of Captain America, because it's that character that decides they're going to be the one that gets back up in the face of adversity.
That's the arc.
And Rey never really does that. She just doesn't have the adversity. She just doesn't really struggle at all.
Right.
Like, she struggles with a mentor not being helpful to her, and she gets some bad news and struggles with whether she likes or hates Kylo Ren, but, not real struggles, whereas it feels like even the superheroes that embody these same tropes and could be said to have the same effortlessness still go through more effort in their movies than Rey ever does. She doesn't face any significant challenges or obstacles to overcome. She gets captured and immediately gets out of it. She gets, fights Kylo Ren is immediately whooping him. Like, the only time she is out of control of her own destiny is briefly when Snoke is overpowering her. Whereas it feels like in these superhero films, they are facing greater adversity, greater challenges that they have to overcome.
The challenges that Captain Marvel faced were more challenging. She had to fight harder and struggle more to overcome them. Like, there doesn't have to be like a magic thing like kryptonite that is their weakness, or like a character flaw that they have to personally overcome. As long as the story makes them face challenges that seem difficult, it doesn't feel like a Mary Sue.
Right. New Star Wars fans might take us to task. Captain Marvel detractors might take us to task for coming up with this conclusion, but I still feel like the assertion that we made that Captain Marvel is quantitatively different from Rey is true. It's just honestly a lot more in the details than in the broad strokes.
I think that's fair. So
either way,
you still like the movie.
I still like the movie.
After some time to think about it.
Sitting through it, at first I was kind of going, uh-oh. Every time I tried to think of a difference, I'm like, she really is the same. But I really feel like the sum of the parts adds up to the whole adds up to more than the sum of the parts.
I get where you were going for.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that old chestnut.
So, yeah, I still feel like Captain Marvel adds up to more as a character, and what it adds up to is completely valid within the Marvel superhero realm. If you're going to complain about her as a, character that doesn't face major significant challenge or need to be rescued, those complaints are valid in Star Wars because every other character does need to have those things. Those complaints aren't so valid in a Marvel movie because the same ones could be leveled against Captain America. So it's like, if she doesn't count, he doesn't count. Whereas in Star Wars,
it's true.
Rey's playing by a different set of rules than every other protagonist we've had in the movie. Any final thoughts on it? Since I've done most of the talking as usual.
I mean, we didn't touch on the end credit sequence scene at all, but I will just be curious to see if that's just a scene lifted straight out of Endgame.
Right.
It's just basically her showing up. There's no build up to it. She's just there.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there needs to be more build up to it.
So either that scene will be like just extended in Endgame, or else she'll just be there at the start of Endgame already.
I feel like it's got to be extended. There's got to be some build up and payoff.
So very interested to see her interact with everybody in Endgame.
Yes.
But no, other than that, I like the movie. I would put it in between the two Ant-Mans because I'm really fond of Ant-Man 2. But it's probably better than Ant-Man 2, honestly.
I'm hesitant to rank it, but honestly, I would put it in the upper half. It feels like with Marvel movies, there's only like one or two that I actively dislike, but then there are ones that I'm like, Then there are ones that I'm like, I like these, and they're like my favorites. I don't know if it quite makes my favorites list.
Sure.
It sort of seems like it's the lower edge of that, but at the very least, it'll be in the category I like, depending on how much the, when the glow post having seen it wears off.
If you were going to do another marathon, and there's no way you can watch 20 movies in a row, would you watch this one?
Yes, this is one of the ones that would make the list. This one's a more than one watch.
Yeah, definitely. A.